finally here. It's taken us a little while to get this segment of the Mantis system set up for our bow. As we promised, I had to get new strings put on my bow. Been on the road a lot, but we are going to take you through today the Mantis Archery system. And much like with the X10 Elite as well as the Laser Academy system, this offers us a ton of feedback. And if you're like me, where you spend a lot of time at the range, you spend a ton of time in preparation during the off season, trying to prepare for the fall. A lot of times we go out and shoot, we're trying to figure out what we're doing, where maybe our shooting flaws are. If we've got someone that can coach us or help us, obviously that can be super beneficial. But what this is going to do is basically be our coach. It's going to give us an idea of the things that we're doing within our shot that may help us narrow down some of the flaws that we have. Most importantly, try and improve our accuracy and our consistency. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you through this. We're going to show you how we take the Mantis system here, the X10 Elite, connect it to my bow and start to get out, put some arrows down range and figure out how can we become a better shooter. This is going to be exciting. I'm super pumped to do this, and most importantly, I am very, very excited about the fact that this is going to help me be a better shooter and hopefully prepare me better for this September. Okay, so the first step in this process as we get into connecting the Mantis system to my bow is I'm going to open this thing up. We're going to be using the exact same sensor that I use with my pistol, that we use with our AR platform, but what we're going to do is we're going to utilize their adapter system that they provide for you. So with each one of them, it's going to come with this system. I do have to download the Mantis Archery app, so there is a specific app, so there gives you some differentiation between shooting a gun or a firearm and the bow, which is fantastic because there's going to be some nuance there that's going to help us as we try and collect and gain some information. This is super simple because all we are going to do is take this small little rail attachment here and we're going to connect it to my bow. And what you'll see here is we're actually going to connect it to a spot that's going to be non-invasive. Typically they recommend that we hook it onto the sight here, and so what I'm going to do is get this prepared so that we can connect it to here, get this guy connected here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the setup with that and making sure that we do this properly so that most importantly the sensor works as it should, because if you don't do this right, you're not going to get the kind of feedback and the reading. The system won't work effectively like you need it to. So we want to make sure that we get it set up properly. We're going to take you step by step through this process, and then most importantly we're going to get out and start shooting some arrows. Okay, so we're going to get ready to mount this thing, and within the X10 Elite system they provide you with the adapter, which essentially is just your Picatinny rail here that allows you to connect this to your bow. There's an adhesive here on the back which is obviously really critical, and they also give you an alcohol swab and a small little kind of towel here so that we can dry things off and make sure that the surface is super clean. And this is really critical. Now, a couple things that we have to consider is where we actually mount this, and they recommend that you mount it to your sight. They don't want you to mount it anywhere that's near your rest. They don't want you to mount it anywhere that would be on your stabilizer or anything like that. Obviously with moving parts, vibration, anything that would be potentially infringing upon what's going on with the mechanics of your shooting or moving parts within the bow itself, we want to keep it away from there. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and mount it directly to the arm here on my sight itself. And even though there's this little bolt here which kind of holds together a lot of this piece, we've already kind of checked to make sure that the height within this is actually going to fit really well here and still allow me to slide the sensor on and off from there. So that's going to be the first thing that we do here, is get this area clean, and then we're going to get this guy mounted on here. So the first part of this process, we're going to clean the area, make sure that we get everything on this arm dust free, get it wiped down really good so that this will give us a good connection with the adapter. So we get that nice and clean. Can use this for a little bit of extra here if your bow's not very clean. Thanks Mantis, I guess, for that. make sure that everything on here is ready to rock. And then I'm going to take my little towel here, dry this area off, make sure that it is good and clean of any dirt or debris so that I can get this surface ready for my adapter. Now, this is essentially just a 3M adhesive here. All we have to do is pull this back, and as we pull this back, we want to try and get this outer layer off of here, hopefully, without pulling the whole thing off. So get this pulled back, expose this, and we want to make sure that as we mount this here that we get this very level and centered. Okay, so I'm going to double check all of this before I set it down here. That looks pretty good right there. And then they recommend that you hold this really snug for about 20 seconds. So I'm just going to kind of give some good pressure here. I'm going to hold this down, give myself kind of a silent little 20 count here, and make sure that we get a good connection with this thing before we go attaching the sensor, because obviously, even though this is going to be fairly stable here, we have to assume that as we start shooting that there's going to be vibration within the bow, moving parts and things, that as we release that bow, we don't want this thing to, you know, dislodge or come loose or potentially fall off. So I'm just going to kind of give this a few more seconds, and we should be about there, and let that go. So we've got our adapter on there now, and what Mantis recommends is that we actually allow this to cure for about 24 hours. So before we just go throwing this thing on here and sending arrows down range, we want to make sure that this guy here has a really good connection, that connection gets a amount of time so that it can solidify itself before we just get out and start utilizing it. So we're gonna let this sit, and then we're gonna load up the sensor onto here, and we're gonna shoot some arrows down range. We're gonna show you the applications within the app itself and how well or how poorly I shoot, and then we're gonna talk about kind of the functionality within the app and things that we can do so that we can improve our shooting, utilize that information to try and enhance our consistency, as well as get the feedback that the system's gonna provide so that it can be helpful to us as we continue practice and getting ready for September. Okay, so we are ready to mount the X10 Elite onto the bow. We have let this dry for 24 hours. Change of clothes and all that wasn't just a switch over. We actually let it set for a day like they asked us to. And as you can see here, if I grab onto the adapter itself, it's pretty solid, which is obviously what we want to see. So to put this on, it's no different than how we connected it to the firearm. I'm just going to use the small little tensioner here, and I'm just going to slide this over the top to get this on, and then as I push it back, you'll hear it kind of click into place there. And now we know that that guy is on there solid, and we're pretty much set to go. So that's realistically all that we have to do. You will notice that it does mount a little bit different, whereas it mounts horizontally on your firearm, and here it mounts a little bit more perpendicular. So I would assume that based on how the app runs, it accounts for that, and so it's going to hopefully give us the same kind of information as we start to get down and shoot. So now we're ready to take it out. We're going to put some arrows down range. We're going to show you how the app works and test this thing out. Okay, so we've got our Mantis mounted here. We've got everything set up. We pulled the app up here. I've taken a couple practice shots, and now we're getting ready to send a few down range. We're going to show you kind of what this looks like. We're going to show you how the shot process works on the screen, as well as just sending a few down, see how well I do, and then we're going to take a look at the data when we get done and see what kind of information we can draw from it, that we can learn about my shot and my process, as well as anything it will give us in terms of feedback. Okay, so as we now take a look at what all this means on the screen here. When you look here, green is essentially the setup where I start. As it moves from yellow to orange, it's where my hold is, and then the red is actually the release. You can see this X here, and then what happens after my release. Okay, so pretty interesting information there. You can see my shot and my release there is actually pretty good, but we're going to try and now learn, what does that information mean? What are some things that maybe I'm doing wrong, and how can I try and steady or fix some of those things, which is to get to the shot, and then as well as what happens as I release the arrow. Okay, so if we show this shot from start to finish here, you'll see how this looks from the start, where I settle down to, and as I approach getting to my shot, you can see where that shot ends, and then where I kind of finish and follow through to bringing my bow down. Now, if we look at this based on where that's at, let's go check and see, because according to this, if you look at it, it's showing that my release was pretty dead center there. So let's go down and check and see if it landed where I shot and how close those are in terms of some of the accuracy and what this thing is telling us in terms of the data. So you can see this is pretty spot on. You can see that's a pretty good shot here. We're shooting at 20 yards, and where I settled and where that release actually showed from the app said that I was pretty centered. So I would say that that's pretty accurate. Now let's go back and let's take a look at what it's telling us in terms of possible modifications or suggestions that the app is making in terms of helping me get to here, or steadying or coming to that shot maybe a little bit cleaner.
Now that we've compiled quite a few shots into the Mantis system, I can go back into the diagnostic tools provided by Mantis to try and determine areas that I may need to work on. Here you'll see there's a slider function at the bottom of the screen that allows me to manually move through each one of my shots and see what the sensor is picking up in terms of my movements as I approach release, designated by the X shown on the screen. The red areas that you see on here give me some information as to potential shot flaws and things that may be undesirable to getting me to a successful shot. Mantis likes to separate these into 4 different quadrants: top left, top right, bottom left, and bottom right. If I tap on any one of those quadrants, it's going to provide me with potential solutions as to what may be causing those red areas to pop up, such as leaning towards the target, collapsing my bow arm, or maybe even simply gripping the bow too tightly. As I go through that, it allows me to gain better insight as to the things I'm doing that I can work on, improve upon, or to learn from each shot so that I can become more consistent. Here's a live view of a shot from start to finish, and shows me how I go from my draw and I work towards settling into that shot and work my way down into getting to release or execution of the shot, which is shown here by the X. As I worked from orange working to release, you'll notice that the red that pops up here is going to be my follow through of that shot. All this information can be super helpful to me to learn more about how I approach every shot and from start to finish the things that I may be doing. Within that, I can now actually separate each segment of my shot process as shown here and compile what the shots I've taken up to this point look like, designated by the current shot being in color and the gray areas in the back being previous shots that I took within that same phase, and see if there are things that I'm doing consistently or inconsistently within each phase that I can learn from and potentially make corrections towards. The last portion of this is the timing function. This allows me to take a look at how long each shot took cumulatively, as well as how much time I spent in each phase of the shot. I can then compare from shot to shot if I'm being consistent in each phase, or if the amount of time that it takes me to get from start to finish of that shot is very similar, or if there's ways with which in that I can actually make corrections or improvements based on this information of understanding time in itself. All of this information that's provided that the diagnostic tools give us helps me learn more about myself, become a better shooter, and learn to be more consistent.
Okay folks, so there you have it, the Mantis Archery system. Pretty cool, definitely will be very helpful to us as we go through our process this summer. We're getting ready for Total Archery Challenge. Obviously, we're always ramping up for September and October and beyond, and this is going to be a great tool. It's definitely going to give us some feedback, just like with our firearms training, where it's going to allow me to understand maybe some of the things that I'm doing. And in the shots that I took with the Mantis system, I've already noticed some common things that I do, some very consistently maybe less than desirable things, as you can tell in some of the videos and things like that we showed you. So hopefully I will be able to use that information, make some adjustments, help improve my consistency, and most importantly shoot better, so that I understand how I am actually operating when I'm going through my process. I really like the function of being able to see what happens as I settle, as I get to my shot, and then what I do as I actually release that shot. And so the goal is, can I narrow those things down? Can I improve the consistency with that using the information that the Mantis system gives me and become a better shooter? So ultimately, that's all of our goals. We really appreciate you guys tuning in today. We hope that this was super helpful to you. If you want to get your hands on one of these Mantis archery systems or any of these Mantis systems, there's a link provided in the description. Click on that link. It will take you directly where you need to go. Get yourself one of these, use your firearms, use your bow, and hopefully this is going to be a huge help to you guys. We appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe to our page. As always, we really appreciate that. Leave us your comments, give us your feedback. We always like to hear from you guys. Let us know how we're doing. And as always, we'll see you guys next time. We'll look forward to the next adventure, the next review, or our next podcast.